One of the most valuable lessons I've learned over the past decade in real estate is how essential it is to learn from the industry professionals. That's why I'm gathering professionals from across the country to share their experiences with you. This is a Gregerson's podcast, where experience and passion come together in the world of real estate. I'm Casey Gregerson, your host, and I'm very excited you're tuning into today's episode. As always, if you have questions for me or any of our guests, please reach out to me at casey@gregersonproperties.com. Now let's get started with today's podcast. Okay, welcome in, guys. Today I'm excited to share our guest, Janine Mix. So I know my wife has actually known Janine longer than I have. They met through Pure Barre and up in Billings, Montana. But I've been getting to know Janine and her husband, Ryan. They're investors, so they have a really cool story, which we're going to share today, of how they got into real estate and how they've really grown. And it's a really cool story. I'm excited to share that with you guys. But also Janine, she knows, comes from running small businesses, from coaching. She's got just a ton of experience, and we're going to dive into a lot today. But we're excited to introduce you. So Janine, glad to have you on.
Hi, thank you for having me. Do you know, fun fact, I actually met your wife. I dressed her when she was doing Miss Montana.
Wow, I did.
Kind of a small world. That's originally how I met her. She was going through all the competition, which was super exciting. I had just moved to Montana. I was like, this is so cool. And then we ended up being workout buddies at Pure Barre, which was amazing.
Awesome. Love it. I'm glad. That should have kicked it off right there. Perfect. Cool. Well, anyway, so let's go into your story, Janine. So I want to hear kind of how you, especially and I know I've heard you tell it before. I've heard it myself. And I think it's really inspiring to show people of you don't have to have all this capital or all this cash to start in real estate. And sometimes you can just jump in. So I'll let you dive in.
Let me, I'll go real quick on the fast forward, because I think there's a lot to people's background, right? People will look at where we are now and not really understand how we got there. So I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the desert, Joshua Tree, no neighbors, no advantage. I was told to go to college, get a good job, the typical advice. So I went to private school, went to the best college for the best degree that I could, went to a private university, ended up leaving that university 6 figures in debt. I was paying $1,200 a month in student loans, which is kind of insane. That was more than my rent in Los Angeles at the time. And so I was just hustling, grinding, working, couldn't even do anything in my degree because I had to waitress. I didn't sleep. I lived off of a quad shop caramel macchiato. I got 4 hours of sleep every day, and I worked 3 jobs in Los Angeles just to get by. And, the typical advice that you get is, just get out of your debt as soon as you can, try to get a good job, all these things. But I wasn't getting anywhere. And I knew at some point, there's got to be other people who have figured this out. It's not just, I cut out my coffee. I'd already cut out as much as I could out of my budget, including all the fun and enjoyment and everything out of life, right? So I'd already cut that out of my life. And I'm like, this is what I have to do for the next 30 years until I pay off the student loan. And then only then I can live. And it just didn't sit right with me. I just knew there had to be a different way. Other people have figured this out, right? And so I ended up meeting Ryan in Los Angeles. He was there for film production. I was there for acting. So we were both in the entertainment industry. We were both hating Los Angeles, hating our life, hating the grind. It was a concrete jungle, and there's definitely an outdoor life that we were missing. And that's kind of how we connected, that and through some church. And we just started talking about life, and we both were broke. We both were struggling. For him, I was broke and in a lot of debt. He was debt free and still broke. So we're like, wait a minute, if you're living the life that I'm supposed to live in 30 years and you're still broke, and we're just sitting here in this, struggling in Los Angeles. 4 hours of traffic to, go 5 miles, which is insane, and we were just working so hard and we were miserable. So we started dating. He told me he was moving to this place called Billings, Montana. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Where is that? And I decided, maybe this isn't going to work out. And, I thought about it and I was like, what? I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I hated my life in LA. I was struggling. I was never going to get ahead. Financially, I was, treading water at that point. And so I was like, why not? Why not move, see where this goes? So we basically hit the reset button on our life when we moved to Montana together. It ended up working out. We got married 3 years later, and we love it here. And this is where we decided to start investing in real estate. And what had happened was, Ryan actually had started investing in real estate when he was in college, right at the recession. He probably shouldn't have gotten a loan. He was definitely a victim of predatory lending during 2008, 2009. And ended up having a foreclosure. And one year he asked his family only for real estate investing books or books on how to make money. That's all he wanted for Christmas. So he already knew that like there's this link between wealth building and real estate, and that is the way. And then he tried it, at like 18 years old, failed, but he still was like, I know that this is the way. I just probably didn't do it right. And at that point, really, the loan and everything was kind of ridiculous. He should have never been, allowed to get that loan at like 18. And so he started talking to me about it, and I was like, what do you mean getting more debt, right? Like I was that person. What do you mean getting more debt? Debt is wrong. Debt is bad. I'm already in debt. I already was like struggling with this fact that I was $120,000 in student loan debt. I couldn't fathom getting into more debt to make money. Do you know? Like that just did not even connect for me. And then he handed me this book that I'm sure you know, and all investors and wealthy, successful people know, and that is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I read that book. I was like, I'm poor dad. Like I totally understood it. It definitely clicked with me. It registered. I was like, this is the way. And we just decided like, okay, we're going to do this. So we ended up taking some like free event thing that someone had come in. Actually, I think it was a Rich Dad, Poor Dad free weekend event. And we're like, okay. And we, got all the free resources and we're like, this is the way, this is the way. And we kept downloading more stuff on his website and, reading in between our jobs. Like I was kind of a bad employee. I don't know if my boss ever knew this, but anytime there wasn't a customer, I was reading about real estate. And same with Ryan. He was working in the foreclosure department at Wells Fargo.
And really quick, what year was this? I just want to track it on the timeline for people. You think
2010 is when we started our real estate business. Okay. So this was probably fall, winter of 2009. No.
Wow. Right. 2010. Right after the session.
No, it was 2010. Yeah. Because we had moved here in spring of 2010. And so this is the thing. Ryan had a temp job. And he was working the foreclosure department at Wells Fargo, and he would come and on lunch and we'd talk real estate and go back and he'd, process foreclosures. Well, somewhere along the lines, like he actually was awarded like most productive employee or whatever. And he really was just good at building systems and making it fast, but he hated that job with a passion. Mm-hmm. Word got around to his boss. So like one weekend they were throwing him a party and gave him an award, like literally like you're in third grade, here's a trophy. And he got a sticker board, a whole thing of him being like the most productive employee. Within like a few weeks later, he was actually escorted out and fired because it had gotten to his boss that he was starting to invest in real estate. And they just considered it a conflict of interest. And so he gets fired. We had done this event thing and we're like, this is it. This is our chance. This is it. Like, what are you going to go do? Go get another job? Or are we going to go all into real estate? At this point, that's like where we were at. It was that moment where you have everything to lose and nothing to lose, like we were broke. We don't have anything to lose necessarily, but then we had everything to lose. What were we going to do with our life? Like, where were we actually going to learn this? How much longer are we going to talk about real estate being the way until we jump in? And so that was a big thing for us. So we had taken that free Robert Kiyosaki event, and then someone else had come into town. A coach had come into town, and we did that event, ended up paying for that event, and then ended up buying into some of his coaching. And it wasn't necessarily the buying of into the coaching. Like that was super helpful. And it was really nice to be like, talk through your first deal with someone. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Is this right? Like, is this legal? Like all the questions. But it was the fact that like it was the point of no return. It was the point of no return for us. It wasn't, and we didn't have the money at the time. At the time, the guy was selling a $25,000 program. And I had a credit card that had a $20,000 limit. And had nothing on it. I had specifically gotten this credit card for this event. We knew they were going to be selling something. I talked him down to 10,000. I was like, would you take 10? And he did. And he ended up being our coach for like 6 months. And we got a bunch of resources from that. But it wasn't, like I said, it wasn't necessarily the 10,000. We put that all on a credit card. It was the fact that there's no going back now. It was interest free for the first 6 months or something like that. And we're like, we have to do our first deal. We have to pay off this credit card and we have to do it. Like there is no going back. Our back was against the wall. It's now or never. Ryan had lost his job. He only had a few months of unemployment, and it was like now or never. And so we decided to take that leap. And at that point, we actually were not married, which is kind of crazy and very risky. I understand that, but everybody has a different risk tolerance. We knew we wanted to get married. We knew we would get married, but we were so broke. There was no way we could even think about even having a wedding. That's how broke we were. So we decided to invest in this guy's program, and we took a leap and we did our first flip house that ended up going all sorts of wrong, and ended up being a rental. That rental, I mean, it's funny how wrong things can turn into the right things.
Yeah.
That rental ended up, we just sold it. So we've had it for 11 years or something like that. And that rental ended up paying off 80 grand of my student loans in 3 months, not 30, right? Like, so it's crazy. That was really truly the first deal for me where I got to see like, oh, there are different types of debt. And if you leverage the right type of debt, it can actually change your life. And it can change, I could pay off my student loan way faster than how long it would take me to cut out a coffee, which is just ridiculous information anyways. But
Yeah. Talk about keep going. This is awesome. But
yeah,
even I bet would love to hear that first deal, because people could probably
yeah.
picture I could take it down a deal like that. What did it
Yeah.
look like, the numbers, just roughly?
Okay. Well, the deal was like super scary because it was definitely a fixer upper. And I remember Ryan's like, I found our first deal. I was like, okay. He probably found it from a mailer. We used to do, or no, from bandit signs, because we used to do bandit signs. We printed them off. They were cheap. We would go and put them up on a Friday night because code inspectors don't work Monday or on the weekends. So we'd go on a Friday night, late at night, go post all of our bandit signs up, the signs that you see. We buy houses, got a Google Voice number, put these signs up everywhere. And then every Sunday night we'd take them down so we wouldn't get in trouble. And so one of those bandit signs worked, got a deal. And that deal, when I drove up to it for the first time, it was on the north side, if you know the location here. It's not a great area of town. And had a huge hole in the ground. Like, it was a huge hole. I'm like, is the house sinking? Like, why is there this huge hole? And there was someone living in it. I just couldn't even believe it. And so at that time, Ryan ended up, I'm sure we were a part of there used to be a RIA here, a pretty significant RIA here, where there was a lot of people. You had consistent meetings, which is just a real estate investors network, right? And I'm sure through someone we'd gotten connected with a private investor. So we got the private investor to do this deal with us because we had no money. We had $20,000, right, on a credit card. We had $10,000 we had spent on for this course, and we had another $10,000 that we could throw in for fixing up the house. So we got this investor to help purchase the property. We would split the deal 50-50. We would do all the work, fix it up, put it on the MLS, and then split it. And all that was super foreign and new, and like things we had to learn, right? And everything was going well until it doesn't, right? That's real estate. Everything was going well, but the house wasn't selling fast. Like, it wasn't selling as fast as what we had expected and projected. And the investor started getting cold feet. And at that point, he was like, he almost took the deal from us because he technically owned the house, right? He was the money on the house. So we were like, okay, we have to save and salvage this deal. So we ended up getting another private investor to buy that investor out with some profit. He just wanted out. He was, just getting cold feet and kind of scared that the house wasn't selling as fast. And then we ended up holding it as a rental, refinanced it later, kept it as a rental for 11 years, just recently sold it on a contract for deed with like 5 other of our properties. So that's kind of how that deal kind of came together. Numbers wise, I mean, it was probably like an $80,000 home at the time that we maybe made to $150,000 home. It really wasn't anything. It was a small single family home, but to us, all of that at the very beginning of your real estate journey, you're like, these numbers seem outrageous. Now we've flipped $1 million properties, so it's definitely different as you keep growing. But that was one of our first deals, and I'll never forget it. And it was winter, so the hole in the ground was like just this muddy hole, and we ended up fixing the hole and everything. And like I said, we've had that be a rental for such a long time. So it's paid us, in the refinance, in the rental income, in the sale, like so many different ways that we've made money off of this one property over this long period of time.
Yeah. And I want to highlight that, right? So they bought it for 80, put, what do you say? What do you think rehab, like
25, 30 maybe?
Yeah. So they basically, they refinanced it at one point, got paid back a chunk. They made the cash flow for the last 10, 12 years. Mm-hmm. And then, so you got, I think, at least in refinance at least once, right? So you're pulling money at different points. And again, this is a deal that like went sideways, or not great, right? Yeah. The first deal, because a lot of people are so scared to do a deal. They're like, what if all this happens? Well, if you're like I don't recommend people buying something that they can't hold, right? Because you guys had multiple exits to where you could just hold as a rental. but then you just let time do its thing. And over time, you got paid all these different ways. So it's
Yeah.
really
And
cool.
what you said just there, you always look for exit strategies. Could the investor taken it back and sold it and whatever? Yeah, we wouldn't have made any money. We would have learned a lot. Okay. Like that's a learning lesson. We still weren't out any money. If the worst case scenario was we lost the deal, we just lost our time, but we also got a lot of education, right? The school of hard knocks through that. And we knew that it could work again. We could do this again. So yeah, we ended up learning so much from that deal. And that's the thing, like there are a lot of ways that you can make money on real estate. There are probably more ways you can lose money on real estate, but at the same time, there's also risk in having a job and having that company stay open, and risk in there's risk in everything you do. I think for us, we still knew like you win some, you lose some in real estate, but most of the time you win some. And if you do it right, you have multiple exit strategies. It is a no-brainer. There are multiple ways that you can make money on properties, and it is the way to financial freedom. I believe that real estate, absolutely, the two quickest ways to wealth are real estate and business. That's it. Real estate and business. So if you want, and it's not a get rich quick, it's a get, I love, it was Keto. I think he said, I love this. He said, it's not get rich quick, it's get rich guarantee. Right. And you can't technically say that, but it kind of is long term. If you stick with it, it's a get rich guarantee, over time. So I don't know. I loved that because it's not get rich quick. It's taken us 12 years to build up what we have. Had we known or had the resources that are available to people today, and also we started from literally nothing, zero. We don't know a lot of people that started there, negative. We don't know a lot of people that start right there. And we can, I think now knowing what we know, we could probably do it in 5 years or less, right? But it's where we started. It was our journey for sure.
Yeah, well, it's cool because that's why I wanted to highlight it. That's why you described it great, Janine. From literally, most people are like, "Hey, I've got some money saved up to go do it." Like they literally did it. They went negative to get it done, and then they still got it. And they still like compounded it. But I love this. So take us a little bit more detail from. So once you did that first deal and kind of how you guys have grown, and I know you guys have done, and I want to definitely highlight some of the stuff you've done in businesses and small businesses, but also in some of the Airbnb. But maybe just tell us a little bit more about how you guys kind of grew after that first one to where you're at. I think would be great for the audience to know,
Yeah. So for us, our strategy was flipping at the beginning because we needed money. Like that was it. There was no saving until you got 20% down to put on a traditional like mortgage. That was not going to happen for us. We had no money. So for us, our strategy at the beginning was a lot of flipping. And for sure, we knew that flipping was a means to an end. Like it would give us, chunks of cash that we could go do this again and go do this again. And that snowballs. But true financial freedom is passive income, right? So as we were getting some of these chunks of money, then we'd buy a rental with that. We'd still be buying fixer uppers usually because those were the things that we were finding were kind of our sweet spot, was finding, I call it turds. Like we buy turds. I don't know if you know Cody Sanchez. She buys boring businesses. I feel like we buy boring real estate. We're not buying the most beautiful places on the block. I mean, that feels really good, but we care less about our feelings and our status and more about cash flow and having a deal that works. So for us, we were buying the things that were ugly, fixing them up, and that actually ended up making us a lot more money that way. And so we started acquiring rentals, and I remember at the beginning, we were like, $100 of cash flow. That's passive. This is amazing. It's funny now because we're like, we definitely look for more cash flow, but at that point, if it was $50 cash flow, $100 cash flow, $200, we were like, this is great. Because you're still having someone else pay your mortgage, right? You're still having appreciation in the property. So it didn't take long. Ryan had a few months of unemployment. It didn't take long for him to go full-time real estate. He had to replace a very small amount of money that he was making. I don't even think he was making $2,500 a month at his job. So wow. It didn't take that long to replace his full-time income with real estate. You do one flip, $25,000, $30,000, that can replace your income. And so he went full-time with that. And then, we continued to flip, continued to buy more single-family, multifamily homes. I would say probably the last 4 years is really where we've accelerated a ton, where now we have, I just sold 2, but so we have 14 furnished rentals. We now have larger apartment buildings. We're getting into the larger apartments and multifamily, not just duplex, triplex, which are great too. And we've been able to switch our strategy a little bit more. We do less flips now. They do take a lot of work. Like if we do a flip, it's got to net us a certain amount for us to continue to do it, because they take some time, but we're really accelerating in our goal of getting more apartment building rentals. We love single family homes and stuff are great too, but the multifamily is kind of where we're heading now in our journey. So that's kind of how it started and where we're at now. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, nailed it. Okay. Yeah, and we'll go fill in some of the stuff in the middle. Yeah. Let's go there now. So I know at some point along the way you started doing some small businesses, and I'm just curious how that's kind of parlayed into the real estate thing and just what you do.
Yeah, so I said the two quickest ways to wealth are business and real estate. The thing with business, so business coaching, small business, any of that, when you are an entrepreneur and you start a business, I think it can go one of two ways. Well, it could go many different ways, but I'll share the two ways it could go. It could go where, cool, you've now replaced a job with a different job that you enjoy and you have control over and you're the boss, but most small business owners tend to lose the benefits, like paying themselves. And I'll speak from a female-owned business because that's usually who I work with. So they tend to not pay themselves for a while. They don't have the benefits that they had maybe at their job, like medical benefits and some of those things too. And so if you're going into a business to basically break even, it's not a great strategy. But if you're using your business's cash flow, like this is where I focus on making, managing, and multiplying your money. You can make a lot of money. The thing is the average financial advice out there is just cut out your expenses, but your expenses have a floor. Income has no ceiling. When you're an entrepreneur, you can keep building and selling things that increase that ceiling. That, you rule number one at wealth building, never have a ceiling to the amount of income that you could make, right? Never have a ceiling. Rule number one. As an entrepreneur, you do get to control that a little bit more, right? Based on the products you sell or what you're doing. And I was doing consulting and retail consulting. And so you make that income, but what do you do with that income? Most people just put it right back into the business. I believe that if you go and put that into real estate, that's what's really going to build you the lifestyle that you want, the freedom of time, So it's this idea that you take the income that you make and you invest it. We call it the gap, which is get another payday. So you have your expenses, you have your income. You can only cut so much. You can't have a zero expense life. That just doesn't happen. You can only cut so much from your life. And that's a short-term strategy to correct a financial situation. That's, if you're in a bad situation where you're spending a lot more than you're making, you got to correct some things, cut some things out. But that's a temporary solution. The ultimate thing that's going to change your life is focusing on your income. And so whether you have a job, whether you have a business, you want to increase the gap between your expenses and your income. And then what do you do with the gap? You get another payday. That's what you invest. So take that money and go and put it into real estate investing. Maybe for you, it's stocks. For us, it's real estate. That's just what we know, what we like. We, don't have to give our money to someone else to make money. And you can have a greater return in real estate than on stocks. I mean, average return for us is 50%, but you know that there's deals that you get infinite return on your money and you just don't get that in the stock market. So for us, it's real estate. So,
just so everybody heard that, she's saying 50% return that she's getting in real estate, which when the people looking at the stock market, it's a lot different number. And that's with the highs and the lows, I'm assuming, right?
Right. And that's the thing too, like the stock market is a long-term game. If you're lucky and if your stockbroker or your company that you're going through is amazing. I mean, I think the stats are that the average financial advisor actually doesn't beat what you could do. Like they don't beat the market. So, if you're lucky with all the sales and commissions and fees and all the things, you could be making 10% in the stock market for sure. But we make way more on that than real estate. I mean, we're giving our private investors 12, 15% on their money, immediately, immediately from day one, take that money from your bank account right now and we can help you make 12, 15% right now, where it's losing, it's about 5% to inflation, 8% last year, right? Your money is just, if you have money sitting there, it's, I said this yesterday actually in a live, I'm like, inflation is like, it's the inflation monster, or it's like a what did I say? It was like a piranha. It's eating your money right now. If you just have all this money sitting in the bank, it might feel good and feel secure, and you definitely have to know how much you need to feel secure, right? How much cash on hand and reserves you need. That's different for everybody. But if it's just sitting there and that's what you're holding on to, it's the inflation monster is just eating that right up. You've got to get your money moving. In fact, money, once it was taken off the gold standard, it's called currency. Well, what do currencies do? They flow. So you have to have your money flowing for you to actually get in the game of economics, which is what our entire world is built around, right? Like is debt and leverage and all these other things. But anyways, I can go on about that.
No, that's good. Well, just to re-highlight what you said. So whether it's your W-2 job or a small business, yeah, you're just trying to you're trying to increase your ceiling. And it sounds like a great way to do this is owning a small business because you can start to have more control on your ceiling, and then just create. But once you started to make money in these small businesses, anytime you got extra, you guys are putting it into real estate and then continuing to create all these streams of income.
Yeah. So for a while there, my real estate or my retail business, my coaching business, consulting business, I'm making money on courses and all these things. We're dumping it back into real estate. Yeah, there's business expenses and stuff too, but that's the whole point is to have both. If these two vehicles, right, these are just vehicles. If these two vehicles are the quickest way to wealth building, how do you use them together? How do you leverage both of those to their maximum capacity? I love all things business. Ryan is like, I just want to do real estate. Like he's like, it's just real estate. He wants to do the deals, negotiate the deals. That's where he's at. I love thinking through the business, and now we're going to be coaching and doing some of these other things so we can help other people get to that place. But
yeah. Well, the great segue, because one of the other big questions is just kind of like mindset. So I wanted to get kind of your perspective. I know this is definitely one of your expertises. It's like, it's all about people. And we've been touching on mindset stuff already, but yeah, kind of talk through that and how, where do you start with different people? And let's give you a scenario of like, hey, they're thinking about real estate, not quite sure if they should pull the trigger. They've got all these different reasons, all these people telling them why it is scary and why they shouldn't do it. What would you say?
So, actually one of the Pure Barre coaches many years ago, this is actually what made me leave my consulting or leave my 9-to-5 job. She said this to me in a Pure Barre class, which you can get really in the zone. And we were doing abs. I can remember exactly how I felt in that moment. Isn't that crazy that you can remember those moments? They were just pivotal. Yeah. And I remember her saying, are you in your comfort zone or are you in your war zone? Because they are very different. Change only happens in your war zone. And, I'm sitting here doing abs and I'm applying yeah, I could be pushing myself harder. But what hit me was my life. Am I in my comfort zone? I had always done retail. I had been in retail since I was 10 years old. And I was working in a retail job. And Ryan was full-time real estate. I was still working the job, right? I still hadn't let go of that. I hadn't let go of the comfort zone of being in the thing that it's confusing too, because I'm really good at it and I enjoy it. But I knew there was something more for me. I knew that I was in my comfort zone. And if I wanted something to really change my life, I needed to get in my war zone. So that was something that really, really shifted everything for me, is to get uncomfortable. It still is uncomfortable. I mean, that, Casey, you'll get a deal and you're like, oh my gosh, is this happening? And that you still have this healthy level of fear so that you're not going and making dumb decisions. You have this healthy level of fear, but eventually you get used to using your fear as fuel or a fear as a compass, right? Sometimes that fear is absolutely pointing to you should do it. You should take that leap. This is what you should. It's getting out of that comfort zone. And using that as fuel, what, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it scared anyways. I'm going to do it totally scared anyways, because that's just part of the process. You see, fear is really interesting. Fear is necessary. Once we realize that fear is necessary and it will always be there, it kind of loses some of its power over us, which I actually really like. So when we realize that it's necessary, and it's there to help us so we don't run into the street and get hit by a car, right? These are our psychology, how we're built. It's there to help us survive. But if it's always in the driver's seat, if it's always driving you, then that's where it can be a problem. And it can absolutely paralyze you, stop you from living your full potential, doing the things that I believe that you are, God-given calling on your life to do. And you have to know that fear is a passenger in your life. I think I heard that from an author. I think the book is Big Magic. Elizabeth Gilbert, maybe she wrote that book. and it's like put fear in the passenger seat. You're like, hey, fear, I see you. You're there. But I got this. I got this. I know you're there to protect me. I know you're there because I'm getting out of my comfort zone. And this whole identity shift has to happen to, like, for the longest time, Casey, I didn't even call myself an investor. I'm like, I'm not an investor. Ryan's the investor. Mm-hmm. But I've been a part of every deal. I've signed all the paperwork. I understand it. I've done it. I've scrubbed the houses. I've painted the house, right? Like, and I wouldn't consider myself the investor. And that was just like an identity shift for me. I had to lose this identity of I'm just a broke, out of college theater major who moved to Montana for a boy, and I'm not really actually doing anything with my life, right? I had to lose this identity because that was comfortable. That's who I knew. I knew her, and it was comfortable to be in her. But I knew in order to get where I wanted to go, I needed to shed that identity and create a new identity and have that confidence to take that leap of faith, use fear to help me start another business, help me get more into the real estate. I run our entire furnished rental department of our real estate, and help me understand, like, I am the investor. I do, like, I've been doing this for 12 years too. It's just so weird what that fear and also these mind shifts, the games that they play in your head, it's actually very, very interesting. And all of that comes from your money story. So I work with primarily females on their money stories. And you have money influencers, like what you heard, what you learned, and what you experienced. Those three things will shape how you view yourself and your mindset around money in general, right? So you can totally self-sabotage yourself if you're still in that old identity. Oh, I've known people who get to this level of success with money and they lose it all. Let's use an example of a lottery winner, right? Most lottery winners lose all that money within like the first 5 years because they go back to that identity that they knew. They didn't relate to themselves as this person who had all this money anymore, right? And then their money story comes into play. Maybe they were, maybe what they heard, learned, and experienced around money was money is evil and bad, and if I have it, I'm a bad person. So what do? If you have that identity, you're going to get rid of the money as soon as possible. People do that. People will self-sabotage like that because they believe that around money. So you have to change your beliefs around money. What you have to know, what did you hear? Like for you, Casey, what have you heard growing up about money?
What part? Like just
maybe from your parents. What did you hear about money?
Yeah, it was like save money, don't spend a whole lot. That was probably it. Just save your money.
Mm-hmm.
Don't spend.
Okay. Now, so you heard that. What were the differences between your mom or your dad? Like, what did you hear or learn from them about money?
Yeah, I know my dad, I remember him like teaching us how to open a checking account and like keep track of our ledger and keep track of our expenses. And then my mom was more so like, she was in charge of our allowances and keeping us motivated.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have these different experiences there too. How do you think learning some of that shaped maybe your ability to take risk in real estate, right? If they're like the save, you don't spend, you just got it, every penny, track your money. How do you think some of that shaped when you started getting invested in real estate, started doing real estate?
Yeah, for sure. I think to this day, like I just every time, and it could be a blessing and a curse, but like everything I want, like just staying on or just doing things, keeping the budgets as low as I can is probably my biggest thing. It's like, hey, if there's a way that we can cut some costs and ultimately increase the profit, like always trying to think how to do that.
Yeah. And for you, like you said, it's a blessing and a curse. You can overuse and underuse any talent that you have, right? So at some point, maybe you're cutting an expense. I know this has been true for us. You're cutting expenses so much that we're walking over dollars to pick up pennies, right? Like when we think about our time, it takes us, like at the beginning, I was cleaning our properties. We're like, we can't afford it. And I remember we bought this house and it had 30 years of a smoker in it. And I grew up with a smoking family. And I scrubbed that house from ceiling to wall. I had dripping down my arms. I had cigarette juice. You know what I mean? And it was in my nostril. And we're cleaning it because we're just trying to save $250 it would have cost us to just get a cleaner. Yeah. And like at the time it was a lot of money, and we were just like not willing to give up the $250. But I remember just crying and being miserable, and it took me what probably would have taken a professional like half the time, right? So sometimes that's what you That's my point in asking you those questions, is to get people to think, well, how do I think about money? Because you asked, people in their mindset maybe are sitting here like they want to get started in real estate, but they're stuck. Well, they're usually stuck because of that identity, because of what they feel about money, success, them, and what they heard, learned, and experienced about money, heard, learned, experienced about themselves. Or maybe, a very famous financial educator, we'll call him Shmave Ramsey. He got burned in real estate. He got absolutely burned in real estate, which is why he went the complete opposite way of like no debt ever. Like there's no wiggle room there, right?
Yep.
Like he's going to die on that hill of no debt ever because he got so hurt. That was his experience. He got so hurt by it that he can't even go back to using it again as a tool, even though he's smarter, has more money, all these things. Like it's just no, right? So how our relationship, what we learn, heard, and experience will absolutely shape where people are. And if people are sitting there right now, I don't know if I want to start investing in real estate. This seems risky and scary and all the things. Yeah, life is full of risk and life is scary. But what's scarier? Not actually living. Like for us, that's what we felt. Like we just felt like we weren't living. We were working all the time, especially in LA. I was just drowning. I was physically ill with the stress around money, physically ill. I would cry about my student loans all the time. When we got married, when we were getting ready to get married, like I knew Ryan was going to take on my debt too. And I felt so ashamed of that, right? Like I was just like, I would cry. I would be sick to my stomach. I wasn't eating well, like all these things revolved around, I just didn't have enough money. And when people say like money doesn't buy you happiness, it is a tool. Money is a tool. It is not the thing that makes you happy, but it absolutely can afford you experiences and access to many different things. And that is the thing that truly real estate and taking that leap of faith will give you. It will give you the passive income to free up so you can do what you want, when you want. You can give generously. Like I always had these visions of, I wanted to be able to donate to causes that I love, or maybe open up an orphanage one day. And, but you also see really broke churches. You're like, man, like money isn't enough. Well, I think it's all how you manage money, how you use this tool and this resource for sure. And money can do a lot of things. I've seen it give clean water to villages in Africa. I've been there where they saw clean water for the first time in their life, right? Like it absolutely can do a lot of really good things in this world. And it's just a tool, and real estate is a vehicle to that tool.
Yes, I love it. Well, I really love the analogy you gave with fear, right? So fear, you got to have it in the passenger seat. Should not be driving, but it's in your passenger seat to show you. I love that. I love the money story, thinking about people that like, hey, what is their story? What's influencing how they're feeling now? But yeah, I thought that's some really good, tangible stuff you gave. Well, we got a couple more minutes left, Janine. A couple things I want to cover before we also want to talk about your guys' event you're having. But one thing is on Airbnbs, right? So a lot of people, Airbnbs are doing really well with that right now. And maybe a lot of people, so there's like the short-term rentals, and then there's maybe people are used to just having a tenant, right? And so some people might think, and I'm just talking from my own experience, right? Some people might think, hey, well, there's all these people making money and doing an Airbnb, and they're making way more profit. So I'd love to hear you give some perspective on like some of the stuff that you've done to make, because you guys have been super successful in this. But I'm telling people from experience, this is not something you just turn on and go from long-term rentals to short-term. So I'd love to hear kind of how you guys have been so successful.
Yeah, we love our furnished rentals. However, it's 10% of our real estate portfolio. Like, it's not, we still love, I think one of the safest things you can do in real estate, you already mentioned this, is have multiple strategies. Anytime you go into a deal, you should have multiple strategies, because there should be multiple ways to exit. That will lower your risk, right? That mitigates the risk. And so, just buying a bunch of properties and furnishing them and hoping for the best can definitely hurt you like anything else. And so we didn't branch out into those until like 2018. 2018 was our first Airbnb. And technically we have 3 Airbnbs, and we have the rest are midterm rental, so over 30 days for travel nurses and things like that. We love both. definitely you can do some major cash flow, right? You go from, oh, I'm cash flowing maybe $500 on a single family home to I can cash flow 5 grand pretty consistently on my Airbnbs. So, yes, it's an absolute amazing vehicle to some major cash flow. And kind of my hook is replace your full-time income with one or two, furnished rentals. But again, it is very active income unless you are having a management company, which they're going to eat into your profits. Unless you're having a management company, do that. It's very active real estate investing. You are dealing with tenants. You are dealing with, things that when you have a property management company that you're not dealing with those. You get your check. So I think one thing that we teach is you should know multiple strategies for real estate. You'll see all these gurus. It's a marketing technique for them to throw rocks at other things. So they'll be like, flipping isn't the way. It's all about RV parks. And then you'll hear it's all about subject to, not, like all these things. But at the end of the day, they all work. Actually, you can do wholesaling, flipping, RV parks, Airbnb arbitrage. They all work. Ultimately, you need to find out what you want to do and what you're like. We're all about lifestyle design. Our membership in our program is Freedom Builders. We're all about lifestyle design. So what you're building in real estate should be to further the lifestyle that you're trying. Ryan hates the Airbnbs. He wants to hear nothing about them. I love them because it's more hospitality. It's a little bit more engaging with a customer, right? And I love that aspect of it. And we do have a property manager, so I don't have to worry about all the nitty gritty. But I do like it as a hospitality. Now, what I would say to people who are investing in real estate, there's actually in my event, I'm going to share with you multiple things that I look for in identifying, is this going to be a good furnished rental, right? The biggest thing right now is Airbnb arbitrage. People are like, this is amazing. And what that is like you're not even owning the property. Maybe there's an apartment building, you negotiate with the property owner, you do a lease, and then you're responsible for the lease, you furnish it, and then you rent to Airbnb. That can be a really great, none of your own cash minus a little bit of furniture, right? Way to get into Airbnb. However, you're going to get none of the real estate ownership benefits. So again, it is a great cash strategy. But if you don't own real estate, that's where you make your money. And you know that, Casey, like between the tax benefits, cost segregation, like there's so many ways you will get high taxable income on Airbnb arbitrage. If you own the property, you get to deduct a lot of things. So I'm a big proponent of owning the property, but that's one way to get started. If you really are starting from nothing, you can start in real estate that way, or in Airbnbs that way. There's short-term and midterm. Most things, even on Airbnb, are now I don't like to say the word after the last few years, what we've experienced, because usually I get shut down. Literally, I've had videos get shut down saying it.
Wow.
So after that happened, people realized they could live a more nomadic life, right? Companies went more virtual, so you could work from wherever life. And so a lot more people are renting things for 3 months, 6 months, like, cool, I want to go live down in Florida during the winter. If I'm working from wherever, I can do that. So you want to be open. I think some advice is be open to tourist short-term rental, but also be open to some long-term. Be open to, maybe professional renting to professionals. We rent a lot of our buildings to professionals, whether they're nurses or we have a couple refineries here. People, pilots, lots of people are looking for furnished rentals, and they're great. They can make great cash flow. They can also take a lot of time. So again, it kind of goes to asking, you can make a lot of ways in money. You can make a lot of money a lot of different ways in real estate, but what is going to give you the lifestyle design that you want, Yeah. I love my Airbnbs, don't get me wrong. And they cash flow like crazy during the busy seasons, but we've strategically located those to make that make sense, Not every house is right for Airbnb. Not every market is right for Airbnb. And I would never, this is some free advice, I would never buy a property solely because you're going to do an Airbnb. Have another exit strategy. What happens if your community decides, because we're in a housing crisis, what if your city decides no more Airbnbs? Okay, you can't rent out anymore. Maybe your HOA changes their rules. You've got to have that backup strategy. Can you rent it out without furniture to someone? Can you sell it? What are the multiple ways that you can do it? I would never get into a property solely because it's an Airbnb. Just personal. That's my preference.
Yeah, that's great advice, man. We could go for, and I'd
Forever on
love to do it for an
Airbnb.
hour on Airbnb
I
advice.
know.
One I did list that I wanted to ask you for sure today
Yeah.
is just how you and Ryan work together. So I know
Yeah.
speak to other couples who are thinking about working together professionally, how you guys do it so well,
Well,
or at
I
least,
wouldn't say we do it well all the time. Actually, our first Airbnb totally sent us into counseling. I was like, it was tough because I know what it needs to look like to sell. And he's more of that, no, we're going to cut this. We don't need this. Are you sure you need this? And it was just so funny. And now that we have so many, he fully trusts my decisions, but it was a little bit of butting heads. But I have some awesome advice. I know we're getting kind of long here, but I'm going to share some awesome advice for working with your spouse. Advice number 1, when you have meetings, you should have a meeting once a month with your spouse. And we used to have the sign, we've gotten better at it now. We used to have the sign that was personal, business, because we do business, right? And sometimes it's like, are we talking about our relationship right now, or are we doing business? Because when you're doing business with the most important person in your life, the person that you love more than anything, it can get really complicated. And so we try not to blend those things. So we'll have the sign and it's like, this is business conversation right now. This isn't personal. So no one's feelings are getting hurt, that we're not like, hey babe, how are you? How was your day? No, it's like business time. And then, okay, now it's personal time, right? Like we had to have that separation, and we both work from home. For a little bit there, we used to have to, because we would just work, and then all of a sudden, it's dinner time, and then we'd still be talking about our business because we're just really driven. And whoa, we don't need to always talk about our business. So we would actually leave our house. Like one of us would leave at 5:00, ring the doorbell, and walk into the house and be like, how was your day? Right? It was relationship time. Yeah. So you have to have some of that separation. It is going to be a little bit complicated because you are doing business with the most important person in your life. So there is a different connection there. The other thing I would say, so a meeting a month to be able to discuss personal and business. And we have board meetings is what we call them. Get outside of your environment in your home. Go and actually go to a coffee shop and have this meeting, because how you talk to each other in home and closed doors, if you're a little bit more irritable one day than, the next, is different than how you'll talk to each other in public. And you want to really keep that relationship solid, right? Like you don't want to get heightened emotions. You're in the house. I'm frustrated about this, so have that just meeting in a different location so you can be really professional with each other and talk about all the things, talk about your personal goals, and then talk about your business goals. But try to keep some kind of separation so it's not all meshed around. That's been really helpful for us. And keep communicating your goals. I give the example that it feels sometimes like we're on two different tracks, like what I want and what he wants. We've always had the same destination. We always have wanted that same lifestyle and what we're building. But sometimes it feels like we're on this train track and we're going parallel. Like we're not on the same track, and that's okay, because there's going to be times that you want something different or you're focusing on something different. For me, I was focusing on my business for a while, and Ryan was primarily just doing the real estate. So, and then sometimes we come together and work on that together. And then sometimes, it's kind of like these train tracks that kind of come together. And it's okay. It's okay that you don't have the same goals all the time. You have the same destination. Cool. You're headed to the same place. Cool. But you're going to get there through different ways because you're different people. I think that's where, you're one flesh, but you're two different people, so you have to be able to understand that how we process and how we communicate and what we want might be different at different times. I remember Ryan being like, I've reached the summit of my life. And I'm like, I'm at base camp. Like, that's how much more I want to go, and just even giving that analogy and giving ourselves a place to talk about that allowed us to see, like, we still have the same destination. We're still climbing the same summit, but we're kind of getting there through a different trail, a different route, and that's okay. Yeah, I think that those are some of the best tips that I can give, and know that the other person wants nothing but the best for you, right? And as you are on the same team. I don't quite understand when couples, there's just so much contention. Maybe they don't have the same goal. Maybe they weren't, didn't communicate things. Like, we talk all the time about that stuff. So, you're on the same team. Remember that when it gets stressful or hard, because it will, you're on the same team. You love each other more than anything, more than any business, more than any flip, more than anything. You love each other and you're building this life together, and you only get to do this once. You only get to live in this life once. So make it really great and enjoyable. And if it's not enjoyable, if you guys are working too much, then pivot and fix it. Figure that out.
Love it, man. That's good. Good stuff, Janine. A lot of takeaways there. My probably favorite one is the sign from like, hey, now it's business, now it's personal, and not blend or having some separation there. That's good stuff. Cool. Well, I'll let you talk about your event now. I think you've done a good job of like highlighting like all the stuff that people could probably imagine what you're going to be able to give this event based on the last 30 minutes. But tell us more about what the event's all about.
Yeah, so we are doing a virtual summit. It's a virtual real estate freedom summit. You can go to realestatefreedomsummit.com. Let me get that right. Realestatefreedomsummit.com. And you can learn all about what's included. But, we're going to talk about the 4 different strategies to make money in real estate. There's many. We're going to talk about 4 of them. Using none of your own money or credit. When Ryan started, he had bad credit, actually, and we had no money. So we're going to share with you our story, our journey, real case studies, real properties, numbers, how to analyze deals, 4 different strategies to get into real estate without any money, any of your own money. Even now, even with money, 90% of our deals, we're using OPM, other people's money. We're going to share with you how to find deals in today's market. I think that's a big thing too, is we've been doing this a long time. I'm not a big fan of learning from people in real estate that have been doing it like a year, and they haven't been through a downturn or they've only been through the heighten of this has been an amazing 2 years for a lot of real estate investors, so make sure you're learning from people who have done it. But we are going to share with you how to find how to find deals in today's market. We've already closed on 6 properties that have given us 12 units. We're closing on more. We've made more money this year in 5 months that we're already in the year than any other year. Like it's accelerating, and we're doing deals now. So we're actually going to share with you what it takes to find deals in today's market. And, spoiler alert, 90% of our deals are not on the MLS. So know that, Casey. So we're going to share with that. What else? I'm going to share some Airbnb secrets, how to run the actual numbers so that you can actually cash flow from day one. I don't think you should ever get into a real estate deal. I said this on my live yesterday. You should never get into real estate for cash flow, whether that's an Airbnb or a rental, and it's not cash flowing. The only reason we've bought a property that's maybe not cash flowing is if you can do a value add. You can, add units to it and increase the cash flow, but you're doing it for cash flow. And I'm speaking directly to my women there, because I think a lot of women were like, oh, that couple's really nice, or oh, it's okay, I can lose money for a little bit, and then it'll eventually. No. You need to make money. You need to run your numbers. We're going to show you how to run those numbers right on that call so that you can cash flow from day one. Period. It shouldn't be a mission. You should make money. Now, as you make money, you get to give whatever you want away. You want to give someone rent-free, for a year, you get to do that when you start building up your real estate portfolio. Be generous when you have the money too. I'm going to share with you my 3-step process for identifying whether or not, it is a good option for Airbnb. I think, some of the secrets to that of is this a good furnished rental? So I'm going to share some of that. Gosh, we're going to go over so many things. It's going to be a jam-packed day. It's completely live. It's 9 to 5 Mountain Time. May 19th, but we are going to do this event more. So again, if you're listening to this later and it's past that event, just go to realestatefreedomsummit.com. Get registered, connect with us. We are super excited. Our entire mission now is to help other people build what we've been able to do in our life. It's great to be traveling the world and doing the things that we love, but we want more people to do that. I want to see more people live out their full financial potential. That is why I was put on this earth, is for people to really, not just their financial potential, what they love in life, their, what they are, to live out your calling in life, to live out God's gift for you. And I believe we are supposed to be great stewards of God's resource. And when you have more of this resource, you will give back in ways that are just so impactful. Money is a tool in this world that can do a lot of amazing things. And like I said, real estate is so is business, is an incredible vehicle to that tool. And I just want more people to have that tool in their hands and know how to manage it, manage and multiply it. And that's our heart. That's our mission. Thank you for letting me share that.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, it's obvious. You could tell just from the last this last conversation for the last hour about how you clearly want to help. And really it's about, like you said, it's about people designing, like there's a bunch of different ways to make money in real estate, but design the one that works for them. So I really like, I mean, your passion's coming through. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. You did one other one before I wrap up. You made
Yeah.
me think as you were talking about this. You talked about using other people's money, and being able to grow in real estate that way. So I'm curious, what has been, when you're talking to somebody who's interested in being a private money lender or partnering or whatever. Why has it been so exciting and appetizing for them to participate on deals with you guys?
That's super cool. We just did a flip and we just took her out to dinner 2 nights ago. She's in town. Again, she used to shop with me. Like that's how we met, which is crazy. Such a long time ago. And what's really cool about that deal? So, her father had passed away and they had a house and it needed a lot of work. She could go list it with a realtor as a fixer upper. She's not going to make nearly as much money on it. And it's also like a really tough thing to deal with. I think some of our favorite real estate deals we've done have been probates or people who have had someone pass, because it's already such an emotional experience and it's stressful. And we've literally walked in, purchased houses that had everything still in it. The family didn't even want to touch anything, that they give me a list and be like, if you find these things, these are the meaningful things to me. If you find them, great, but they couldn't even go into the house as it is. And so in that deal, we ended up negotiating with her. We're like, if you hold this property, we'll split the profits. We'll do the work on the property and you're going to make a lot more money. And what was really interesting about that, she had a couple sisters. They wanted nothing to do with it. They just wanted their money now. So we paid them out and paid them a little bit of money. And then she ended up being the sole owner of the house. And then she just went in with us. We got another private investor that we gave 12% on our money for 4 months. It only took us 4 months to flip it. And then, we gave that investor a little bit more. We like to be generous. And anyways, did the deal in 4 months. She was able to make 35,000 as opposed to maybe the 14 she would have made, right? Mm-hmm. And we were able to make 35,000 on it as well. And it was awesome. And sitting down and asking her, like, how did everything go for you? Like, did you feel it? And she was like, that was amazing. And it feels so good to have it closed. It's awesome that I got to make more money on it too. I knew there was an opportunity here to do something different. I could have listed it with a realtor, right? But stuff like that, when you can have a win-win-win situation, that is what we want to do. Like, it's not about, oh, cool, you've got a great deal. We got a great deal on a house. We're going to make a bunch of money. No, when we can get the seller what they need, we can get what we need. And then even the buyer gets what they want. Like, that is a full win-win situation. And so when you're using other people's money, private, seller financing, all different things like that, you're always looking for win-win solutions. Like, that's it. It's not like, what can I get out of this deal for me? Like, that's never worked out well for anybody. It's really like, how do we make this a winning scenario? And when we get people who are like crying and like, I'm so grateful you're able to take care of this for me, and or get to see the property after it's fixed up. We flipped one house that she came in and she cried. It was emotional, but she's like, whoa, look at how much more beautiful the home is. Like, the shower her mom was showering in, you had to bend over. She never could stand straight in the shower. Now it was like normal. It's just so fun to see that transformation and to see how you can help other people in tough situations. And then also everybody wins. Everybody's making some money on it. That is a winning scenario too,
Yeah, I love the creativity there, because you could do that with, you guys did it with somebody you had a relationship with, but even just when you're talking to sellers, like, there's so many times that these people, if they have a house that is in distress or is not marketable, it cannot be sold, it can't get financing, like, these people are going to take a steep discount. And as you gave a great example, and we've done some like that too, where, hey, like, let's collaborate and get creative and do some seller financing to where you get more money. Like, because if not, you have to sell it at a discount, because somebody's got to take the risk, right? Mm-hmm. If you could share the risk together, you get to share the reward. So I love how you guys structured that together.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, anything else?
It's always nicer when you don't have to use a bank. Let's be honest. When you don't have to go through all the red tape of a bank and all the T's and I's, and there's nothing wrong with banks. We still do a lot of bank loans. We still have great relationships with multiple banks, but there's just some things that whether it's a realtor or a bank, it ends up bringing a lot more attention to the deal than needs to be there, because they're just trying to mark their boxes, because everybody's got their own liability things that they have to cover. Sometimes when you're just working directly with that seller or investor, man, it is just so much easier. Like there's definitely a time to list your property and use a realtor and use a bank and traditional lending, but there are so many other times that when you could just get creative, like you said, Casey, when you could just get creative, it can just be amazing for everybody. It ends up being a much better deal and way easier. I mean, 4 months to get that done with like no friction it was like, oh, and then what that does is it builds up that confidence. Maybe she'll go and invest again, right? And then that other private investor that, I want to do that again. That was a really quick 12% to make on my money in 4 months, like let's keep going. And that's, again, where you get your money working for you all the time.
Yeah. So many people benefit from your private investor who made a return to the seller who got more out of it to you guys as investors. Yeah, just created all that value all around, because you guys collaborated. So yes. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Awesome, Janine. Well, anything else? We're going to wrap up with that, but anything else you wanted to share?
Man, just keep listening to things like this, to this podcast, keep getting inspired, but don't sit there. I said this yesterday on my live too. I was like, where else are you going to learn about real estate? You're not going to learn it in school. Your professor's not a real estate investor. If he was, he wouldn't be a professor. You're not going to learn about this in school. I've seen a lot of people whose parents have invested in real estate, but they never shared how with their kids. So are you really going to learn from your parents? Are you going to learn from school? Are you going to keep watching HGTV and be like, I could do that? Are you going to scroll some YouTube? Are you going to wait until interest rates go down? When are you going to get started? And where are you really going to learn from? Because you learn from others who have done it. That's it. Period. End of story. That's why we invested the first time in a coaching program. We learned from someone. You can collapse time. You save a lot more money avoiding the mistakes that they learned already on their dollar, right? And you can collapse time. You can learn it pretty quickly. And then the other thing you have to do, you have to stop thinking about if you should and just do it. So I would just say, keep listening, get inspired, but at some point you're going to have to take some massive, imperfect, messy action, which we all did, right, Casey? When we did our first deal, we were just like, what are we doing? How do we do this? Does it work? And we're still figuring it out as you go, but you only learn by immersion. That is how you learn about anything. You have to immerse yourself into it, and from that you will grow. And whether you fail, again, failure is part of the process. Fail fast and fail often, because that means you're doing something. It means you're moving forward. So I would just say, get off your butt and go do it. Join us for our class. Keep listening to this podcast, but just go do it. You can do it.
Yes. Oh man, so many golden nuggets today, Janine. Yeah, you just nailed it. And guys, I encourage you guys, follow Janine. She shares a ton of stuff. You could tell she's passionate about training, and I think you summed it up really well. It's like, hey, go listen to the right podcast, or just start learning from other people. Learn the hard lessons from other people. They've already made the mistakes. Don't do the same ones they've done. Learn from them and implement. And like you said, just go for it. So thank you so much for being on today, Janine.
Thank you for having me.
As you may have learned by tuning into this episode of Gregor Sense, the easiest way to make real estate investing hard is by going at it alone. So as you continue learning and seeking knowledge of the industry, I want to encourage you to build relationships with other professionals who are passionate about real estate. Whether that's an agent, a business owner, or a managing investor like myself, there are pros that want to see you succeed and are willing to help you by sharing their experience. You can always reach me by visiting CaseyGregerson.com and scheduling a call. I look forward to connecting with you and continuing to share my experience with you here on Gregor Sense Mobile. Until next time, I'm Casey Gregerson. Thanks for tuning in.